Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to At America, the U.S. Embassy's American Center. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ara, and I will be the MC for today. For those of you new here, At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission here is to provide a space for people to learn more about the United States. And our event for today is U.S. Visas 101 Study in the United States. But before we start, we have a social media quiz that you can answer online. And the question is it true or false? There are two categories of U.S. visas, immigrant and non-immigrant. You can submit your answer on our social media platforms, and the quickest who can answer the question correctly will receive a live shout out from us. And now I'll be passing the stage to our moderator for today's event. She is an advisor for Education USA. Please welcome Kak Caroline Darmanto.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Kurang semangat ya kayaknya. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Okay, thank you all for being here today and for spending your Saturday with me and with us here at America. Before we start, let me introduce you of who Education USA is and what I do here. So my name is Caroline. I'm one of the Education USA advisors here based at America, along with my colleague May, who is standing right there. So Education USA mungkin ada yang udah pernah dengar sebelumnya? Atau ada yang udah pernah konsultasi dengan Education USA? Udah? Oke, untuk teman-teman yang belum pernah dengar atau mungkin di rumah yang belum pernah dengar juga apa Education USA ini. So Education USA is a network under the US Department of State and we are available in over 170 countries. And what we do here is we provide you with information, accurate and comprehensive information about studying in the US. So whatever you need help with, whatever you want to know about studying in the US, whether it's on researching your options, atau tentang scholarships, opsi financial aid, atau butuh bantuan untuk review CV, butuh review resume, butuh review essay, atau mungkin ada kebingungan-kebingungan saat mendaftar, you can always come to Education USA and consult your problems with us. Today we're gonna talk about visa, student visa to be exact. And I know a lot of students here mungkin belum pernah apply untuk US visa sebelumnya atau mungkin masih kurang paham dengan prosesnya seperti apa, mungkin berapa lama untuk mendapatkan visanya. Gak usah takut, di sini kita akan memberikan paparan yang sangat lengkap untuk teman-teman semua supaya bisa mengerti lebih dalam lagi, mengerti lebih lanjut lagi dengan bagaimana caranya apply untuk visa. So without further ado, please help me welcome our speakers for today. Meidinar Latupono, the advisor for Education USA at America. And then Mr. Evan Robbins, Vice Consul for US Embassy, Jakarta. So please help me welcome them on the stage. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So I think the first session would be Evan will be presenting today, yeah? Okay. Oh, so we're gonna do Kahoot first. Sorry about that. Okay. So before we start the session, we're gonna have a warm-up quiz on Kahoot. So everyone, please have your cell phones ready and scan the barcode right behind me. May and Evan, you can join us well if you want.
I left my phone.
Okay. Do you know? Oh, 3 people have joined in. So we're gonna wait a little more. We have Eric Kaban Ara. Oh, our MC Ara is joining as well. Burhan, Andreas Jijel. I wonder who Ed USA is. Okay. Okay. Is that Jason Derulo? We have a celebrity here. All right. It's like 17 people. That's not bad at all. That's a lot. I'm the problem. Who's the problem here? Who's that? Okay, are we gonna wait for a little more? We're good? Okay, so we can continue. Everyone here knows how to do this, right? Udah pernah coba Kahoot sebelumnya? Yeah? Okay. All right, so we have a few questions for today. It's all about US travel and visa. So we're gonna start with the first question. What is the capital city of the United States? We have New York City, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. Oh, mungkin untuk teman-teman semua ya, jadi untuk nanti pemenang top 3 nilainya itu nanti akan ada hadiah yang bisa nanti diambil di member booth di depan selesai acara. Oke, semuanya menjawab kecuali satu ya dengan benar ya, Washington DC. Correct. Jadi walaupun banyak kota-kota besar di US, mungkin banyak juga yang mengiranya, oh capital city-nya mungkin New York because it's a very big city, but it is not the center or the capital city for US is Washington DC, di mana semua kantor pemerintahan ada di situ. Jijala Curry, nah, oke. Susah ya namanya. Oke, nomor 1. Let's see kalau Jijala ini nanti tetap bisa di nomor 1. Oke, number 2. Which city is famous for its Golden Gate Bridge? New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Las Vegas? Okay, let's see. San Francisco. It is in San Francisco. It's not in Las Vegas or Los Angeles. LA is in California, just like as San Francisco, but Golden Gate Bridge is in San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, let's go to the next question. Let's see who's number 1 now. Artis nih nomor 1-nya Jason Derulo. Siapa sih Jason Derulo nih kalau boleh tahu? Kira-kira? Oh, nggak ada yang mau ngaku ya? Oke. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Number 3. Which of the following holiday is celebrated on July 4th? 17 Agustusannya Amerika nih ya. Memorial Day, Labor Day, Independence Day, or Thanksgiving Day? Nice. Independence Day, correct. 17 Agustusannya di Amerika ya, Independence Day. Thanksgiving Day is also a very big holiday, but it's in November. Okay, Jason Derulo masih nomor 1. Nice. Next question. Which US state is known as the Sunshine State? Is it California, Florida, Hawaii, or Texas? It is Florida. So California is, I think it's the golden state. Sama-sama bright ya, sunshine and golden, but they're different. Oke, kita lihat hasilnya. Wow, tiba-tiba Val jadi nomor 1 ya. Oke, nice. Kayak makin seru nih. Next questionnya adalah, which of the following cities is known as the birthplace of jazz music? Anyone here is a jazz fan? No one? It's nice music. Okay, is it New Orleans, Chicago, Los Angeles, or New York City? New Orleans, correct. 9 orang ya menjawab dengan benar. Okay. Oh, that's all. So let's see, nomor 1. Nomor 3 kenapa bisa ada di USA ya? Nomor 2, I don't think you're the problem if you're number 2. Oke. Nomor 1 Eric. Eric bisa angkat tangannya. Eric yang mana? Nice, congratulations. Oke, jadi nanti teman-teman semua nomor 1, 2, 3. Oke, kecuali nomor 3. Nanti bisa datang ke member booth selesai acara dan nanti claim hadiahnya ya. Okay, thank you so much everyone for participating. I think we're gonna give the floor to Evan, so he can do the presentation on US student visa. Go ahead, Evan.
Thank you very much. All right, welcome everyone. And first I want to tell you, I dressed this way on purpose. Since we're talking about going to the US, I thought I'd dress US. So I've got high top Converse and jeans and a t-shirt. And I was thinking we should add to the questions, which US presidents are on Mount Rushmore? That would probably be a good question if you want to add it later. But I'm glad to be here. I want to tell you a little bit about myself because the questions I want you to ask later include everything about going to study in the US. So not just about visas. So a little bit about my experience with education in the US. I first started, I got an associate's degree when I was a police officer working in Arizona. And then later I decided to go back to school and get a bachelor's degree. And so I went to Arizona State University, and I've seen a lot of applicants that come in for visas that are going to Arizona State, so good for you. And then after I decided to change careers from being a police officer to an attorney and become a lawyer, I went to Brigham Young University where I got my Juris Doctorate degree. And all of those were kind of later on in careers. So you don't have to be a recent high school graduate to be thinking about getting a student visa to go to the United States. I started law school when I was 30 years old. And if that's what you want to do, then think about going to the US to do that. So don't think limitations. Anyone can go be a student, and we're going to tell you how to do that. If you have questions about it, after becoming a lawyer, I also taught for a year at a university in Colorado, and I taught as an adjunct professor a few times at various community colleges. So anything you want to know about schools and colleges and studying in the US, feel free to ask those questions as we go through. So how do you get a visa? That's the biggest question that we're here to answer today. And why do you want to do it? A lot of different reasons you might personally have. And so before I get started into the presentation, the one thing I want to stress to you, if you want to go to the US, you're going to say, well, which school should I go to? Where do I need to go? How much is it going to cost? The first question that you need to answer for yourself is, what do you want from your education and from your education experience? Because whatever you want, you can craft that going to various universities and programs and schools. There's a wide range of things. That's one of the reasons why we put up here to study, just the diversity and flexibility. Decide what you want to study, why you want to study it, and then find the program that fits that. You don't have to go to Columbia, where it seems like a lot of our Indonesian students go. You don't have to go to Arizona State. You can go to a wide range of programs. Another reason why is there's outstanding support for international students. I can tell you from personal experience working at universities and attending universities, every university has an international students office. And that's all they're there for, is to help the international students feel comfortable, get acclimated, get to their classes, and do all of that. And then access to internships. You do get opportunities after you and during your time in education to do internships and to actually get hands-on experience in the field of your choice. So it's a really great opportunity to really expand your horizons and get a lot of experience other than just going to classrooms all the time. So how do you get the visa? There is no magic formula. There's no special question that you have to answer just perfectly. You need to present as a credible student. So how do you do that? Well, tell me why you're going. How are you going to get there? What was your plan? Why did you choose that school? That's why I said the first thing you should do if you want to do this is be honest with yourself. Say, what program do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? And then be able to answer that when we ask you. Pretty simple. So to be credible, you have the ability to pay for your schooling, so secure finances. You have some plan. Why are you doing this? Why did you want to go to this school? Why did you choose this degree? Then why you may have chosen that school or program. Now that can vary quite a bit. You know, like I said, there's no special answer. Maybe you chose that school because you like where it's located and it's near the beach or it's near the mountains. That's fine. That's a perfectly legitimate reason to choose your school. Just have a reason. You know, why did you? Well, it's the one I could afford. It's the one that gave me the most financial assistance. My brother went there. My sister went there. Whatever reason it is, you know, just explain why did you choose that program? Why are you going to that school? If you, the biggest, I guess, caution, don't come to the window for an interview with us, and when we say, oh, why did you go to that school? How did you find this one? I don't know. I just chose that one. It was in the book. Yeah. That doesn't seem credible. That doesn't seem like you know what you're doing, like you really wanted to do this, like you have a plan. So have reasons for those things. Know those three things and explain them to us, and you'll be a credible student, probably. One of the things sometimes the students worry about is the English language, and how are you going to do your interview in Bahasa Indonesia or English? Either one is fine, but you need to explain, if you have struggles with the English language, how you're going to overcome that to go to class. So maybe you have an English language component first, and then you start your bachelor's program or your associate's program, perfectly fine. But just make sure you understand that and have that in mind. So here's what the visa looks like. It just goes right into your passport. It has some information on there. The type of visa, this one's showing a tourist visa. Oop. See if we can get this red dot. And it's kind of small red dot, but you can see up here where it says B1, B2, that's a tourist visa. And a student visa would be different in that, but everything else is going to be the same. These are the types of visas that you can get to go study in the United States. The traditional one is called an F visa. So instead of the B1, B2 that you saw on that last slide, it would just say F1. Or if you're bringing your family with you, if you're married, you can bring your wife or your husband. They'll have an F2 with you. So the F visa, you're going to an accredited U.S. college or university or some private secondary school that has the approved English language program, or you have already qualified with your English language skills. The M visa is non-academic, vocational study or training, so maybe you're going to go learn to be a pilot or something like that. J visa is an interchange program, which some schools have figured out is a good way to make it more affordable for you. And what I mean by that is when you go to an F visa, there is a fee that is charged whenever you are approved. You have to pay, it's the equivalent of $195 US for an F visa. But if let's say you want to go do a master's degree at a university, a lot of our master's degree students use J visas, and they don't have to pay that fee. The J visa doesn't have a reciprocity fee. Now, there are some other limitations with the J visa to consider, but that's one of the reasons why some of the schools will tell you, oh, you need to get a J visa. We don't use the F visa, as it avoids reciprocity fees, and it just basically same thing, gets you to there, gets you in the program. There's other documents that are the exact same, but they're just a little different classification. So how do you get it? Well, first thing you have to do is you have to apply to a school and be accepted. So you can't get a visa until you've been accepted to a school. Then they'll send you forms for the type of visa that you need. You have to pay a fee online, that I-901 SEVIS fee. You'll pay that online. Then you come schedule your visa interview. You'll pay that fee. That's just an application fee. Then you come for your visa interview. And then finally, if it's an F visa, you have to pay the reciprocity fee after the interview. And the reason it's after the interview is you have to be approved for the visa before we're going to charge you that reciprocity fee. So if for some reason your visa is declined, maybe you don't have your documents in order or something is amiss there, you don't have to pay that fee. You only have to pay it when you're ready to get a visa. Question? Go ahead.
For the one that I don't have to pay the fee, can I do that if I'm just going to the university right out of high school? Or do I have to wait for that one, the J visa?
The J visa, it depends on the school's program. So they're the ones that kind of determine what visa class you're going to be able to apply for. So if you're just out of high school and maybe you're going for a summer program, I don't know, maybe it's an orientation program at the university, you're going to go just for a few weeks. Most of them travel on a J visa right out of high school. If you're going to go to a community college first, before you go on to university, it's hit or miss. Sometimes it's a J visa, most of the time it's an F visa. So again, it just depends on the program and how the school chooses to do that. Good question. So once you're paid, once you've done all this, ta-da, you're approved. You get to go. So what to expect during your appointment. Whenever you show up at the embassy, you're going to go through this security checkpoints. You're going to have an intake window where they will take your fingerprints. You're going to have the actual interview is next to the last, unless you're doing the F visa, then the paying that fee is the last thing. But the interview is the last thing you do, and you'll know after the interview whether you've been approved or not in almost 99% of the cases. The only reason you wouldn't know at the end of the interview is if there's some additional processing that has to be done on your application, which is very rare. So that day, you'll know, yes or no, that you got your visa. Whenever you come to the interview, make sure you have a valid passport. You have to have at least 6 months remaining on your passport. Now, what if you don't? What if you show up, you don't have some of these documents? Well, during the intake phase that we just showed you, when you go through the document intake, they'll let you know that you're missing certain documents and what options you might have. If you need to come back another time, or if you can continue on, do the interview, and then just provide us the documents later. There's various options. So don't panic if you show up and you're like, oh, I forgot my document, DS 2019. You can still get it to us later sometimes, or the I-20. So then your proof of payment of the SEVIS fee. So don't have time to really explain what SEVIS is, but basically schools in the United States are registered into this database that's SEVIS, and it shows that you are actively accepted as a student at a recognized university, and that you've paid this fee and that you're intending to go there. You've accomplished all of your registration for the school. They've accepted you. And so that SEVIS fee is totally separate from our fees, and that's why you pay that online before you come. Make sure you come with a credit card if you have an F visa, or bring cash to pay the reciprocity fee. The $195 US is adjusted for whatever the exchange rate is at the time. So have a little bit extra if you're bringing cash, just because that's flexible. And then you might bring scholarship information with you. So if you're getting financial aid, either from various Indonesian government programs, or sometimes the schools have international student financial assistance, bring some of that documentation with you. It helps show, again, that you're a credible student, that you have the ability to pay for the programs, and that's what you want to do. Things not to bring: don't bring a laptop, don't bring a whole bunch of extra documents and other paperwork. Generally, we don't need to see anything else other than those documents that I listed before. If you have some special circumstances about your situation, let's say you're really worried that your financial situation, you want to make sure bring your bank documents or your parents' bank documents or something to show, yeah, I can afford school. Don't refuse me because you think I can't pay for the school. Very rarely are we going to ask to see those. But if it makes you feel better to carry them with you, you can bring financial documents to support that you have the ability to pay for school. The processing time usually takes 2 or 3 working days to process. So we have a very fast turnover. Lucky in Indonesia, we have one of the highest and fastest turnover rates on the application and getting your visa printed. Again, it might take longer just if there's some additional administrative processing, but again, that's very rare. And we can issue your visa up to 360 days before your classes start. So let's say you want to go to school next spring. Let's say you're starting on the spring semester, February of 2025. You could get your interview and come do it right now if you've already been admitted, but you can't go to the United States with that visa more than 30 days before the classes start. So if you want to plan ahead, you can do it now up to a year in advance. Almost a year, 5 days short. So this reciprocity fee, since August of 2019, if you're getting an F1 or F2, so that's something to consider. If you are going as an F1 student, you are married, your spouse is going to go with you, and you're bringing 2 children, you're going to have to pay $195 for yourself, $195 for your spouse, and $195 for each child. So be ready for that reciprocity fee. And that's only for the F-class visas. One of the things that you're going to see on a J visa, at the bottom, there's some boxes that are checked on almost every program, especially for school programs, that you're subject to this thing called a 212E. What does that mean? What am I subject to? So by signing this and by getting a J visa, you have to come back to the Indonesia for 2 years after your program is over, before you can get any kind of an immigrant visa or temporary worker visas, L visas, which are if you're working for a company here that's going to transfer you to the U.S., or you're going to get married to get a K visa. That's the 90-day fiancé visa. So when you go on a J visa, you're limited. You have to come back to Indonesia for 2 years before you can go back to the United States using any of those types of visas. All right, now that doesn't mean that you go on a J visa this year You do a 1-year program, and you want to come back again next year on a different program. You can do another J visa. You can go back on those classes of visa and do some more on your program or do a different program, but you can't do these types of visas. On your travel day, don't forget to bring your passport with the visa and the I-20. That's your form that says what kind of a visa you've got. At the top, it'll say J1 or F1. You can't miss it. Take that with you. You have to actually carry that with you when you go to the United States. And then have your name and telephone number on that. So what is your DSO? Your designated school official. You need to be in touch with them and have their contact information. Just in case you have any problems, they are the person just to get in touch with. It's very important too, because that SEVIS information that we were talking about earlier, if you don't go to classes, they're going to send a notice. This person did not attend classes, and they can cancel that SEVIS status or find you in violation of your SEVIS status, meaning you're no longer recognized as a student, and now you're going to have problems being in the United States because you're not a student anymore. So make sure you have that contact information in case something comes up, someone gets sick, you don't make it to class the first couple of days or first week, or you want to change your classes, make sure they know what you're doing. Communicate with them. Anytime you drop or change your major, transfer to a new school, take a break, move to a new address, extend your program, or any other of those SEVIS changes. And there's their email information. So how do you maintain your status so you don't get into trouble? Well, you have 60 days from the program end date. So what that means is when classes end, at the end of the semester or at the end of the school year, you have 60 days to leave the United States. So you don't have to panic and say, I got to get out this weekend. Classes ended Friday. I got to be gone on Saturday. You have some time. Talk to your officials there if you have to extend your stay, or maybe you want to continue. You just finished your bachelor's degree. You just graduated, but you've been accepted already to continue on to a master's degree program. So you're just going to change that status. You can do that. Maybe things worked out. You got an internship, then you got a job offer, and so now they want to offer you a job with an H-1B visa. Let them know that too. You can transfer directly from one stage to the other, but keep them in the loop. And you can learn more about those work visas at travel.state.gov. So this is a big question that comes up. How do you afford to go to school? Can I work while I'm in school? Generally speaking, the F visas don't give you the chance to work at a job, but you can work on campus sometimes, depending on the school you're going to. You can work up to 20 hours a week on campus, and usually, that's one thing you want to look at when you're choosing your school. Universities will have a set group of jobs on campus designated for students. And so you want to look and see how many jobs they have available if you're worried about having the finances. And then after you've finished your academic year, there's an OPT, what we call the Optional Practical Training Program, where you've finished school, you've graduated, but you can actually stay longer in the United States working a paid internship or a paid position with one of the companies you may have interned with for a period of time. So that's a short answer to the can I work. Here's some useful links. We'll leave these up. We have a lot of question time at the end, but if there's any questions that you have right now, burning questions that you'd like us to answer, feel free to ask. All right, then keep those questions. You have time to answer them later. I'll put this up just for the next few minutes, so if you have any need to write some of this down, you'll have a chance to do that. And I'll turn that back over.
Thank you, Evan. All right, so next we have May. She is an advisor here as well, but she is going to share her experiences while studying in the U.S. On a J visa and how she obtained that. So go ahead, May.
Yes, thank you, Kak Caroline. First of all, I would love to introduce myself again. As you know, I'm one of the advisor, but how could I get the J1 visa is because I went to the United States with Fulbright. I did a Fulbright foreign language teaching assistant in the University of Michigan. And because it's with the interchange persons to get knowledge or skills, therefore you are eligible to get a J1 visa. So many of you, I was wondering if any of you are applying, planning to apply for Fulbright, anyone? Or LPDP? Anyone? Okay, so if you're applying for Fulbright or LPDP, most likely you will get a J1 visa. And if you're applying for schools or anyone, bachelor's degree in the US right now, anyone? Don't be shy. Most likely you can apply for an F1 visa. So with the J1 visa, it's pretty straightforward, as it is already explained before with the wonderful slides. The thing is with Fulbright is that the Fulbright will help you with many things, like paying for the service ID, helping you obtaining the DS 2019. Basically, you will have a PIC from Fulbright who will help you and arrange your visa interview, or like the whole thing, basically. The thing is, at that time, so I'm gonna share what happened to me during my time applying for the visa. It was 2021. It was after COVID, post-COVID, but at that time, it was still big. So you have to travel. You took the PCR test, right? What happened to me was I had already set the date for the visa interview. And then a day before the visa interview, I will have to fly to Jakarta at 10 a.m. And at 7 a.m., I was positive with COVID. So I had to cancel my flight, forget about the interview visa, the visa interview and the whole thing. And you had to reschedule. And that's when many people got panicked. I was panicking because like, oh, yeah, I'll probably leave for the US next year, not this year. I was so overthinking. It was scary experience because if I went back a few months or like a month-ish before filling out the DS 160, it was also pretty complicated. And taking back before doing that, taking the picture is also complicated because apparently they have a very strict rules, kind of like what kind of a picture you can take, the color of the background. If you're wearing a hijab, they want to see your hairline, they want to see your ears. The thing is now that everything is so modern, everything is very easy with technology, you can get that access of information from everywhere. So you can prepare basically. And you can ask if there's something you're scared about or like if you're having doubts about doing that, you can actually contact from these links or like go through these links and check if your documents or any other requirements are already fulfilled. Doing the DS 160 is also very complicated because I took 7 hours because I did not want to make any mistakes. It takes 7 hours to like make sure you don't have any plans that day and just focus on filing your DS 160. The thing is, it's basically pretty straightforward as well. The questions are sometimes like you can just answer yes or no. And if you say yes, you have to give the proof. For example, like there are gonna be questions about like have you traveled to other country before? And then if it is, what's the purpose of the travel? So just like be honest, because like you have those documentations on your passport. Other than that, it's not that difficult. The thing is that it's your first time applying for a visa. You got scared. You don't want to make any mistakes because you got this thought in your head: if I made any mistakes, I'm not gonna go to the United States. You're too scared. After that, it's pretty straightforward again. Like after you submitted it, you will get a notifications. The service ID is already paid for by the Fulbright. Pretty easy, and they will issue your date for interview. Again,
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Because what you mentioned on the DS 160 goes back into the credibility issue as well. So if you don't fill out your DS 160 completely and accurately, then that kind of counts against your credibility as a student. It means you didn't show that you took the time. You may have just thrown this out there at the last minute, like maybe if it happens, it happens. I'm just trying to try my luck and see what happens. That doesn't show that you're a credible student. So pay close attention. I don't know if you have to take 7 hours.
Yes,
Hopefully, it won't
yes.
take 7 hours every time.
Yeah.
But be very complete and precise and accurate with filling that out.
Exactly. That's what we were trying to do at that time. It was like we do not want to miss anything. We just, because we know that making any interview appointments, especially during the peak season where students are going to the United States, it's very difficult to find the time or you have to it's that kind of competition with other students to book an interview schedule. But anyway, I got that DS submitted. It's already confirmed. I got COVID, and then I had to do a reschedule. So Fulbright was also very helpful at that time. The thing is that I live in Malang at that time. To take this interview, I have to fly to Jakarta. With me being, sick with COVID, and then you have to reschedule. Apparently, it is pretty flexible because you can change. At that time, I can change my where I can take my interview. So I went from the U.S. Embassy at Jakarta in the first appointment, and then the second appointment, Fulbright suggested me to go to a consular in Surabaya, and I really appreciated how flexible it is because it's easier. It was easier for me to travel to Surabaya instead to go to Jakarta. So I guess it is also like if you guys are far away from Jakarta, I guess go to the nearest consular. Like if you're in Bali, for example, I guess it would be easier if you travel to Surabaya rather than fly all the way to Jakarta. And if you're in Sumatra, especially, you can go. If it's easier for you to go to Medan, I guess it's easier for you rather than go to Jakarta all the way. And it takes only and then the interview. I know that you guys were also very scared about the interview, but it is pretty straightforward as well. They will ask you for your passport and your DS, and it's very nice. The officer was the one who's folding my DS, putting it in the passport, and reminded me don't lose this. You will have to bring this everywhere, anywhere in the U.S. if you're traveling and anything. And they will ask you questions like, oh, you went with Fulbright, they were gonna ask you who's your sponsors, and you can say oh yeah, I'm with LPDP, for example, or I'm going with Fulbright, or if you're a self-funding student with the F1, just say that you're going to United States. It's a self-funding program, or maybe not later. Caroline can also help with the story, and then. Well, they know, the officers actually know what is Fulbright, what is LPDP. The thing is that you still have to confirm the credibility again. They will ask you where you will go, what programs are you taking. Especially with Fulbright, we have so many programs, not only master's or PhD, but also some fellowship program. They will ask you, oh, what are you going to do in that university? They will ask you, what did you choose that university, especially how long are you going to stay? And I know it's going to be, you were nervous at that time, and I was so nervous that I'm just trying to answer it in a trying to answer it in a very relaxed way is quite difficult. That I tried to do the chit chat with the officer, and I was just she said oh, you're going to Michigan, that's very nice, and I was just did you ever go to Michigan? And I was just, of course, probably she did went to Michigan, but it was scary because the thing is that after the procedure of going to the embassy or the consular, you get through the security, and sometimes it was very, very intimidating, especially for people it's their first time going to the embassy or the consular. You cannot bring your phone inside, which is pretty boring because I had to wait for at least 2 hours inside doing nothing. So I was just staring at the ceiling, watching some pictures on the wall. There's nothing much to do. Or checking your documents, checking your DS, passport, and probably by then you already had it outside of your head already. You remember everything, you just confused what to do. But the interview itself doesn't take longer than 15 minutes. So it was apparently very quick.
Yeah, I would say 3 to 5 minutes not 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my case, that was less than 3 minutes.
You see, yeah, it was pretty straightforward. Again, like they just want to check, I guess, with your documents, like is it credible and everything. It was really nice. And then like after 3 days, I guess, I had a notification that I can take 3 business days.
Mhm.
Because at that time I remember it was Friday, so I had to wait until the next week to get my passport back with the visa. And then, phew, finally, it's confirmed. I can go to the United States. And I know that in my DS 2016, the program start date I remember, is August 28. And then because you have the 30 days grace period, I left Indonesia August 22nd. So I left like a week earlier or 6 days earlier because you guys do not want to miss the orientation day. It's very important, especially when you're new to the city. It's your first time. You're coming with your parents. You want to go through all the orientations. You want to go around the city. Find your way when you live in the U.S. Start to adapt, and then during the program, yes, you cannot get a job with J1 visa. You cannot apply. You cannot even like secretly take a job because like I know some people are tempted to like maybe I'm just gonna like do that, like not telling anyone. But no, they can tell somehow. I do not know these things, but like at that time my batch were so scared. We do not even wanna like do like ask for our presentations and the teacher will give you a voucher for $20. We're just gonna like no, we're not. We do not want to take anything. Like, no, we do not want to like risk having problems with our visa. Because like again, like like with the J1 visa, you cannot like get that 20 hours extra part-time work on campus. But it was really nice. Like I do not have any problem at that time during my stay. But what I noticed is like my roommate at that time, she's a Belgian, and she also got a J1 visa because we were in the same program. She wanted to go back home for Christmas. And because she went outside of the United States, I remember that Fulbright was very careful with this. She had to take a lot of documents process. Like she had to send her DS to Washington, D.C. to get a stamp, got it back, and then check again with a visa, and then she can go back home to Belgium and go back to the United States. But again, I guess if you guys have any of the resources ready, like you know whom to talk to, when to start doing it, it's basically pretty easy. And then after the program ends, my program ends in May 1st, 2022. Again, with the 30 days grace period, many of my friends and I did too, is to travel because that's the time when we had more free time, not being confined with work or with study. We can travel to other states, to other cities, but not going outside of the US. Because if you went outside of the US, you cannot go back to the United States. You have to go back home. And then it was pretty easy. Some people stayed for like 2 weeks. I stayed for 5 days extra to travel anywhere in the US, inside of the United States. And then you got back home. And with the J1 visa, you had to stay at home for 2 years. So that's why during the interview, when they ask you, what are you gonna do after you come back home, or like when the program ends, we just say like, oh, I'm gonna go back home, go back teaching at my host institution at that time, or like goes back to work in Indonesia, because they wanna make sure that you do not want to violate those visa requirements. So I just stayed here for 2 years now. It's already 2 years this month, and I haven't had any plans to maybe, who knows what happens in the future. But it's pretty, it's pretty convenient. Like nothing, as long as that you guys are being true, filing it, you know, like honestly, nothing's gonna happen. Nothing's bad gonna happen. No problems gonna happen. So yeah, so that was my experience with my J1 visa.
All right, thank you, May, for sharing your experience. Yeah, so we actually have a few questions online, but we're not gonna get there yet. So we're gonna discuss a few things more, and then we're gonna take a few questions from the audience on site. And just a reminder for everyone who is watching at home, if you have any questions, you can type it in on, if you're on the Zoom comment box or Instagram, anywhere, and then we'll read your questions, and we're gonna ask your questions here on stage. Okay. Before we get there, how are you, Evan?
I'm well, but I did have one comment
Okay.
on something that she mentioned
Okay.
that reminded me. The start date on your program. So whenever you get your F1 or your J1 forms, don't worry about what the numbers are, but the one that has F1 or J1 at the top, it has your program start date on there. And if you come for your interview too close to your start date or after your start date, you may not be able to get your visa because you have to enter the United States before that program start date. So let's say you come in on Friday, your program starts Monday. It takes 2 to 3 days to process your visa. We'll tell you, sorry, we can't give you your visa. You have to go get a new form from your school with a new start date that you can actually make it to the U.S. on. So it's very important to look at those start dates. You don't want to go too early. You can't go more than 30 days before, but you don't want to go too late either.
Right. So they basically have to obtain a new DS 2019 or I-20,
Right.
and then go through the process again and applying with visa.
Right. They don't have to go through the application process
Oh,
again.
okay.
But they do have to get a new form, and they can send the form in. Won't need a new
Right.
interview or anything, but it will take additional time. or delay.
Okay. That's good to know, because that's the information that I've never, I never knew before, because most of our advisors here, they're pretty much well prepared.
Right,
Like,
and they
yeah.
went on time. And
Exactly.
so you never face that, but we do see regularly. There's one or two, that'll come up, and
Yeah, I mean,
your
things
program
happen,
started
right?
last
Yeah.
week. Maybe you had a hard time getting an interview
Right.
date,
Right.
and so the date is now expired. And they've talked to their school. Usually, the school says, "Okay, yeah, we understand you're having a hard time getting your visa appointment. We'll allow you to start a week later, but they need to give
Okay.
you a new form showing that date."
Okay, that's good information. So when we're talking about the interview, I think May already mentioned this before also that, there are a few period where everyone's going to an interview, right, for the visa. What if let's say in the next 1 month or so there's no availability time? Is that,
Well,
is there any way?
That's a big
around
what
that?
if for us because we have a lot of openings because you're lucky being in Indonesia that the processing times are very low and the wait time for an appointment is very short. You can get
that's
one in
good.
just a week or two. So if that became an issue though and you needed one, you can contact us through the email to try to get an emergency appointment set up.
I see. Now, we also know that there's a consulate in Medan, Surabaya, and Jakarta. Is it possible, let's say if I live in Jakarta, but the the closest available time is in Surabaya, or does Medan?
Yeah, I'm sure.
is
As long as you're in
visa?
Indonesia, you can go to any of the available time slots.
Okay, so it doesn't
Surabaya
have
or
to be
Jakarta.
Okay, that's
But my associate are saying, don't do that though. So because we get some that they couldn't get into Surabaya. They went to Surabaya once and they come to Jakarta. So there's a lot of bouncing around that's done. The preferred thing is you go to your geographic consulate.
Okay, got it. So I think that's good information for everyone here. Anyone who is going to apply for a visa, keep that in mind. Okay, so let's talk a little more about the requirements itself. A lot of the mostly come from the parents. When the students, they're going to a bachelor's degree, parents usually come with them, or at their studies sponsored by the parents. So they were asking when the U.S. Embassy is asking for like the financial proof, does it have to be like a bank statement, or can it be in other forms?
Yeah, a good question. And generally, we're not asking for that type of evidence. The way the interview usually goes, you've already put in your DS-160 application information about the school you're going to. The SEVIS documents will say something there about your funding and how you're paying for your school usually. And then if you come in and we'll say, how are you paying for school? I say, oh, well, I got a scholarship from the government, or well, my parents are paying for it. I say, well, what do your parents do for a living? They have a store, they do this or that. That's usually sufficient for us.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to require your parents' financial documents for the last 10 years and showing what they earned to make sure.
Right. Because the school's already asked for it and they already approved
And the
that.
school, they say there's been already some verification of your ability. You've already paid several fees showing the intent and the ability to do that.
Okay, that's good to know. Because I do get that questions a lot.
Yeah, and generally say the financial questions can generally be answered just orally.
Okay.
But if for some reason there's a concern, again on your application form, say, oh, well, maybe they have some reason to believe maybe you can't afford this. Or in the interview, you say, I'm hoping I can afford it. Then we might say, well, maybe you need to show us a little bit more documentation about it.
Right. Yeah, speaking of the interview, I think, I'm going to share a little, a little further of how my interview went. This was, many moons ago. Years ago, before the reciprocity existed. So my interview actually only lasted about maybe 1 or 2 minutes. They asked me 3 questions. I was there with my dad because he was going to take me to the U.S. He was going to stay for 2 weeks to make sure that I was there okay for the first 2 weeks. We went in. The person asked me, "How are you?" He said, "Yeah, we're good. How are you?" "I'm good too." And she asked me, it was a lady I remember clearly, she was like, "So where do you want to study?" And I'm like, "Oh, Green River Community College." She was like, "Oh, that's nice. You're the dad?" My dad was like, "Yeah, are you going to take her there?" "Yeah, going to stay there for about 2 weeks, maybe." And she's like, "Okay." "What do you mean, okay?" "Yeah, interview's done." Like, oh, we waited there for 3 hours outside.
Yeah,
Maybe
sometimes people are disappointed.
only 2 minutes.
Sometimes people are disappointed. No, ask me more questions. I've been waiting 2 hours for this. You can't be
But
done already.
it was that simple. I mean, because a lot of people were scared. They're like, "Oh, what are they going to ask me? I wonder if I'm going to be able to answer the questions." But 3 questions.
Yeah.
That was it.
It's because the documentation is usually so thorough for student visas. Say we've got the SEVIS information, and while you're coming up to the window and while they're scanning all of that, it's open and they're looking at all of that information. So, the income, your parents, your schools where you went to, where you're going to go for school, all of that information's already up. So we don't have to ask a lot of those questions.
You already have all the information.
Yeah, and so as
Just
we're
check
looking
and
at it and we're talking and we just want to get the feel from the applicant.
Right.
Are you a credible student? Do we really think you're going to go and go to school?
That's good to know, though.
Or is this an excuse to go get a job? Yeah, so
Let's hope not.
that's right.
All right. Okay. So we have a few questions, and we're gonna read maybe 2 questions from the audience online. But anyone here want to ask a question to either May or Evans? Okay, we have one right there.
Thank you, Evan and Mbak May. I think what you present is the situation that is very ideal and also match with the ideal applicants as well, going study and then go back home. My goal is different. So a bit context about myself. I'm an entrepreneur myself. And also my target is to study, pursue masters in business administration. And for sure, after finish the study, one of my objectives is to work in the US using the OPT, not only 1 year, but then 3 years, because there is an extension for certain master's specialization. And even maybe during the study, I will aim for a startup fundraising. So it's not only about getting the job, but also maybe creating a job. So based on the presentation is very match with the ideal candidates going back home, but in my condition is different. So do you think I have to be when it comes to interview, do you think I have to be, to present myself as an ideal applicant, or should I be open about this? Thank you.
Sounds like you are an ideal applicant already, because you're going for a master's degree program, so you've already got some education, so you're credible as a student. You have a career plan on why you're going to go get your degree and an advanced degree, and the fact that you're going to take advantage of the legal options and opportunities that you have at the end of your study program to gain real-world working experience. None of that is bad. That would be ideal student information as well. So I don't think you need to feel like you have to hold something back. Be open with your plans, and as long as they fall within the type and class of visa, then good for you. That just adds to your credibility in the interview.
I got it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? Oh, okay, we have one more.
I have a couple questions because my daughter is currently applying for F1. She's, how old are you? 17 and a half, a bit below 18. And there's a couple of documents that is required from the application. We're a bit confused. One is letter of intent to go back to Indonesia. Should she be signing that, or me as the sponsor should be signing that? Second one is, what's the second one? Second one, I forgot. No, there's another one. She forgot. Hold on, suddenly.
That's
It
fine.
skipped to my mind. No, there's the insurance. It's proof of insurance. Isn't she supposed to get the insurance at her school and not here?
Yeah, those are both really good questions. And since they're dealing with a specific application, I'm going to wait and answer those afterwards offline. But generally, if you read in the state.gov and the travel information about which documents, they'll have examples for you on what needs to be signed and who can sign it. And then, yeah, the insurance can vary on where that source is. So we can talk about that specifically for your case.
Okay. Any more questions, sir? Okay. So we're gonna take 2 questions from our audience online. The first one is related to insurance and medics. Are there any specific health requirements or medical examinations needed for a student visa application?
Oh, good question. Yeah, short answer is no. For an immigrant visa, you do have to go get a medical exam and have all kinds of things like that. But for student visas, there is not a similar thing. On your DS-160, there's a question there about whether you've received your immunizations and things like that. And so you have to answer that, and there's some medical questions there. But generally, no, there's nothing other than that that's going to be required.
Okay, good. Now, is there an age limit for applying for a student visa?
I hope not. I probably would have been too old to be a student. So no, there is not. Again, it just comes to the credibility question. If you're 70 years old and you want to go to the United States and study something, good for you.
Okay.
Just tell us why you want to go and convince us that you're going to be a student.
Okay. So there's no age limit. Okay. So anyone who wants to study in the U.S., if you're 50 and you still want to study, go ahead. There's still a chance, right? Okay. We're gonna take one more questions from our audience here, if there's any. Oh. Okay. If not, maybe you guys will have some later. But I do have a question about working in the U.S. So you mentioned if you're an F1 student visa, then you'll be able to work for 20 hours per week, right? And which I did that during my study. I worked part-time in campus for the admissions office. But I guess what happens during, let's say, the summer semester, where not everyone will take classes. Maybe not all classes are available, but will that student be able to work still without taking classes?
Unfortunately, the answer is going to be it depends. Because you have to look at the totality of their circumstances and what their status is as a student.
Okay.
If they're taking any kind of classes, if their classes are completely out, if they're still in their student status, what kind of campus jobs do they have over the summer for students that stay there? Generally, general rule, you have to be enrolled in doing something for that. But again, they may not even be available by the school, so conditions vary. So just ask your school and your contact there what kind of opportunities they have available over the summer.
Okay, so talk to the school.
Yes.
Right, for these things. All right. Any questions from our audience here? Not yet. So we're gonna go back to the questions online. Right. So the other thing is that you mentioned there are some documents that you have to bring during the interview, right? Would it be possible for someone to bring some extra documents just to show or like to prove that, we're credible? Like we're bringing in more documents for you. Is that okay?
Yes, the thing about what not to bring, Extra documents and paperwork. If you feel that there's a weakness in your application that could affect how you're viewed as a credible student again, then yes, feel free to bring supporting documentation for that.
Okay.
But as you mentioned, this is a very short interview.
Yeah.
And whether the officer is going to ask you for any of those documents may or may not happen.
Okay.
So if they feel they're pertinent or important to their decision making, they'll certainly ask for the documents. But generally, the decisions can be made with what is available. So don't bring a big stack.
Okay. So question is for me. Do you remember how long was the duration given to you on your the visa? Like how long was the visa validation? Do you remember?
Actually, no.
Actually, no.
But I just remember the program start date and program end date.
How long was the program?
It was only 10 months.
Oh, it was 10 months.
Yes.
Okay.
That brings up a good question, though,
Yeah.
because a lot of times people think, well, the visa tells me how long I can be in the United States.
Right.
You know, that's what you're asking, kind
Yeah.
of, is, how long was it good for? Well, the visa only gets you into the United States. And then ICE and other
Right.
people determine how long you can stay there.
Yeah.
So as long as you enter the United States while the visa is valid, then you can work out how long you're going to be able to stay there with that visa. So like the OPT and things like that, a lot of times that might go extend beyond the actual date that's on the F1 visa, but you're still legally in the United States because your status was established at the timely manner and it's been extended through that process. So don't get hung up on what that date says there for what your
That's just
visa
to
is
get
valid for.
into the U.S.
Right.
Right.
So that gets you in there, and then they'll tell you how long you can stay.
Yeah, someone else will determine that. Okay, so that brings up my next question because this is interesting, and I got this question a couple of times. Well, I went to the U.S. My visa was valid for 5 years, and then I went to a community college, and then I transferred to university. I didn't have to apply for a new visa. That I didn't know. I thought I had to come back home, apply for a new visa, get the new university name on the visa, and then went back to the U.S. But apparently that didn't have to happen as long as I got a new I-20. But what happens if, let's say, a person, say with an F1 student visa, graduates from the bachelor's degree and want to continue to master's degree? Does that person have to apply for a new visa, even if there's still a validation?
And again, it depends. It depends on whether you're changing that in the United States or if you're coming home to do it again. So if you're in the United States, you finish your bachelor's degree, you want to continue on for your master's degree, then you can work through the school and with the SEVIS people and all that, and you can adjust your status and change it there.
As long as you don't come back home.
Yeah, and then you just continue on as if that same
Okay.
visa. Again, that's why I say the date on that visa that you started out
Yeah.
with isn't so important as all of the things that happen later in the United States. And so, yeah, you could just continue on. Now, a lot of times we will have students that leave, they finish, they come back, and they're going to start a new program, and maybe they're going to a new school. And they'll get a new visa because the old one has expired now. They've come back to Indonesia,
Right.
and so they now can't travel on it anymore. And then you have to pay the reciprocity fee all over again.
Then $195.
Right. And even sometimes they'll leave and take a semester off, come back, and want to go back, and they have to pay the reciprocity fee again to get a new visa. So it just depends on the circumstances.
Oh, okay. I see. May you
I
wanna
do
say
have a
something?
question. Is that the same thing for J1 visa?
J1 we don't see so much because it's a shorter visa.
Yeah.
Usually it's like a 2-year program maximum. A lot of times it's a 1-year program. So again, it would just depend on the circumstances on whether they can change that in the United States. Because the rules are different if you're in the United States versus if you come home. So when you come home, then you got to do different things.
And also, like you mentioned about the 2 years requirement, and everyone from the Fulbright, and also probably later with LPDP will have to do that too. The thing is, I know that some of my peers with Fulbright awardees, we applied for a fellowship, and then we want to continue to apply for the masters or vice versa. Does we also have to wait for 2 years before applying, or applying for the program, or applying for the visa?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question too. And let me see if I can remember where that was. Nope, the other direction. Anyway, the short answer is no. So whenever you have that 2 years that you have to wait, you only can't go with these immigrant visa classifications or the worker or fiancé visas. So if you're going to go back, you went for J1, you finished your program, and 6 months later you want to go back on another J1 to do something different, you can do that.
Okay.
So J1 visa, J1 class is not one of those with the 2-year.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, good to know. Anyone here? Okay, one more question.
Check. Just want to ask, technically speaking, if we have B1, B2 visa and then apply for J visa, is it one of them will be deactivated or is it going to be existing parallelly? And also the reason I ask this because Mbak May mentioned about the restriction of going out of US. Meanwhile, I think during the program study, there will be a lot of going outside the US for programs.
Yeah, and that's where it gets kind of tricky with you and your travel plans because you get both visas and they both stay valid. So if you come in, you already have a tourist visa, a B1, B2 visa, and you want to go to a program, you get an F visa to go be a student. Whenever you go to the United States, let's say, let me give you a hypothetical. Your classes start in August of this year. You have a tourist visa today, and you want to get a student visa to start classes in August. But then you want to go to the United States next month. You can still do that with your tourist visa. Next month, you go to the United States, month of June, but you have to come back here before you go back to the US with your student visa in August. So I understand. So what I always tell students whenever they come in and they have a tourist visa in their passport already, I tell them, hey, when you go to class and when you go to school, make sure when you enter the United States, you show Border Patrol your student visa when you enter the United States so that they know that that's the one you're entering on. And that one's the one that they get counted for in entering the country. But the tourist visa is still valid. So if you wanted to go to Toronto, you could travel on your tourist visa and come back on a tourist visa, but you might run into problems with your student status because now you've left the country. And so you got to watch out how you use that. But it's still going to be a valid visa. It won't be canceled out.
So maybe to add one note, I will be not in Indonesia like 1 month or 2 months before going, let's say, to the US. Is it going to be a trouble? So should I be in Indonesia first and then going to US, or as long as outside the US?
Yeah, you should enter your study program within that 30-day window from Indonesia with your student visa.
From Indonesia then I have to go.
Or
back.
from outside the United States.
All right.
I guess it doesn't have to be from Indonesia, but you do have to leave the country, come back into the United States.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
That's actually a good question, and that's kept my mind. So thank you, because I had an advisee who is Indonesian but studying. She is on a scholarship in Japan, so she will be entering the U.S. from Japan. So that's possible.
Yeah, that's a fine, yeah.
Okay, all right. Any more questions from our audience here? No, not yet. Okay, so I have a question about the reciprocity fee because that didn't have, I didn't have that before. For J visas, I guess they're like you don't have that. But what is that for, and why do we have it now?
Sure. So reciprocity fee, the word reciprocity indicates something that our government will charge because Indonesia's government will charge. So we reciprocate that if American students want to come to Indonesia, they're charged a fee. And so if Indonesian students want to go to the United States, they're charged the fee. And so we try to keep that fee matching as closely as possible. And so that's why it's called a reciprocity fee. And it only came about in 2019 because that's when that change was made as far as the fees.
I see. Okay, all right, got it. Thank you. Now, we do have another question from our audience online. And how, the question is about living expenses while on a student visa. I guess this especially comes if you're a recipient of any program from a scholarship program. So I guess, do they still have to have that some kind of proof? The question is proof of that type of funding, or does that letter of guarantee or letter of sponsor from the scholarship should work?
What did you have as far as showing that you were able to afford to take care of yourself?
I didn't have to show anything.
Okay. That's good.
So with Fulbright, there's a screening process, and the whole part is already kind of established. So if you're on a Fulbright, it's very easy to get through the interview process. Again, if there's no red flags, if you will, or concerns expressed during the interview about your ability to be supported, it includes your housing, it includes your food, it includes your school fees. All of those things are taken into account as just financial ability to support yourself. So you don't have to show individual accounting.
I see.
I have this much money for housing, I have this much money for food, I have this much money for school and tuition. It's just an overall, are your parents going to be able to support you?
Right.
Yes or no?
Okay, that's good to know. Any questions from our audience here? Okay. Now, I do have a questions about some missing documents and interview, or any mistakes on the DS-160. So let's say we took some time to fill it out, make sure that everything was put in correctly. But what if there's a typo on the document? Will that be a big mistake, especially when it comes to the vital information such as names, birth dates, or anything?
Right. So there's good question. It's kind of a two-part question. Is that some of those questions a typo isn't going to matter.
Okay.
But if the typo is your date of birth, that might matter.
Okay.
Because now you were saying, well, who is this person? Is this correct? So yeah, it just depends on which information, and all of those things can be corrected.
Okay.
So you're not going to be just kicked out the door and said, sorry, you failed because you had a typo. But if you have the date of birth wrong, for example, what's on your DS-160 versus what's in your passport, then we might ask to see your birth certificate now because we need to verify what your date of birth is. Because now we have a question. So then you might have to send in that document later because you don't have it with you at the interview. So some typos are probably more important than others. Another one that we get a lot here is the name not being the same because you've got several different name changes or you're only using part of the name.
Right.
And so as long as we can show the passport name and how you have that name, then that's the name that's going to be on the visa. So it's going to match your passport.
Okay, so the visa will match the passport, not all the other IDs, not the Indonesian ID or anything.
It's going to match the passport.
Okay, got it.
So if there's a discrepancy between, say, the kartu keluarga and your passport, then we'll need to see something to support that change or why that's not.
Because that happens here a lot. The KTP says something, passport says something, and then maybe the driver's license says something. That happens a lot.
And one of the things we've done before, we'll tell someone, Eka, you need to take your passport down to Imigrasi and get the name corrected to reflect the same thing as your birth certificate or something. Yeah. And so then they just go down and get a new passport, send it in. They don't have to schedule everything all over.
But that doesn't mean that there's going to be a problem with the visa, right? So people can can relax.
Yeah, it won't penalize you and make you disqualified for the visa itself.
Okay.
Just might make the process take a little longer.
Just a little longer. Okay. Okay. So I guess the soonest that you can get the visa is about 3 business days, right? But what if you have to send in more documents? Can you estimate in terms of how long will the process take?
And not really with any kind of accuracy because it just depends on how long it takes you to get the documents to us, how long it takes someone to get a chance to review those documents. Generally speaking, I'm certainly it'd be less than a week before somebody would have a chance to look at them again. But if it was something that time was critical and you're coming up on your program start date, then you'd want to make sure that's annotated on your documents when you send them in, whether it's by email or in person, just so that they know, hey, let's fast track this. And we have an excellent staff; they can process a visa pretty quickly, if we need to.
Okay, that's good. Now, one more question from me, and I think May get this a lot also, is that when a student comes in, they would ask, so which visa am I going to get? The student does not determine that, right?
Right. Whenever they're coming in for the student visa, their documents already say if you're coming in for an F visa or a J visa or an M visa. Whenever you applied your DS-160, all of that indicates what class of visa. Now, we might have an occasion where they come in with the wrong one, and they've applied for, it says a B1, B2 on my interview, but I really want a student visa. We can change those
Oh, okay.
to go to the correct visa class if it's just a mistake like that. But you'll know when you come in which visa you're getting, and that'll be something you worked out with the school because you know their program. If they
exactly.
want Fs or Js. And
Work with the school first, because then they're going to have to send in whether it's the I-20
right,
or
they're
the
gonna get
DS
2019. So.
Okay. Okay, so we can have one more questions from our audience here. Anyone here want to ask anything before we wrap up the event?
I have a question.
Oh, you do have a question. Okay.
Was it worth it? You went on J1 visas?
But yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes. I would do it again.
May wants to do it again. I might
Yes.
want to do it again. Maybe not with an F1 visa this time.
Excellent.
But yeah, but it was very much worth it. I think anyone would say the same thing as well. That when you go to the U.S., it's not just about the the academic progress that you're making, but it's a whole lot of
The
different
whole
Yeah,
experience.
the whole
The
experience.
experience. The network. It was amazing.
Yeah. Or do you want to ask anyone here questions, Evan?
I don't have any other questions.
You don't have any other questions? Okay. Anyone here want to ask one last question before we wrap up the event? Nope. Okay, if not, thank you so much, anyone who is at home watching and anyone here who has come here. And if you took part on the Kahoot quiz earlier today, if you're number 1 or number 2, number 3 does not count because that's me. We don't have number 4. So feel free to come and see us at the member booth right outside and claim your prize. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, May, for sharing. And I'm going to give the
you.
floor back.
And thank you all for
You want to
coming.
say something? Ara. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to Pak Evan, Kak May, and also Kak Caroline for the discussion. And we hope that everyone here enjoyed an event and also gained a lot of insights from today's event. And earlier in this event, we had a social media quiz, and the question was, is it true or false there are 2 categories of U.S. visas, immigrant and non-immigrant? The correct answer to that is true. Immigrant visas are issued to foreign nationals who intend to live permanently in the United States. Meanwhile, non-immigrant visas are for foreign nationals wishing to enter the United States on a temporary basis. Shout out goes out to @Alivia Dewi from Instagram for answering the question correctly. And for those of you here who are interested in attending more events by @America, you can follow our website. You can visit our website at www.atamerica.or.id. Also follow us on our social medias at @America. And with that, it's time to say goodbye. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining our event today. And see you soon at the next @America event. Thank you, everyone.